Hey guys, welcome to another session of DevSpace webinar series. Today we'll be discussing about another new addition to our Senate Mobile Telco APIs, which is WebRTC. So before we begin, we'd like to take a quick recap on what we have covered so far on the webinar series. So first we had a session on Node.js where we explained on how to build telco applications using Node.js. We covered APIs such as SMS, USSD, charging, location, subscription, the whole bunch. And then we had an exciting webinar where we introduced one of our new APIs for the Internet of Things. So if you guys missed out on these webinars, you can catch them again on our website, devspace.senatmobile.com, or you can visit our YouTube channel, youtube.com/senatmobile, to catch these past webinars. So which brings to today's session, which is on WebRTC. Alright, so now let's take a look at the topics that we'll be covering in today's webinar. First, we'll start off the discussion by talking about what is WebRTC, and then Sandrenu will discuss how WebRTC works with the Senate Mobile APIs, and then Randula will do a coding session on how the APIs work, which will eventually help you to understand how you as a developer can benefit from using WebRTC in your applications. And then finally, to wrap up the session, we'll talk about the trends and use cases that works well with WebRTC. Alright, let's talk a bit about the history behind WebRTC. So back in 2011, Google introduced WebRTC as an open source project for browsers, and its primary focus was on catering to real-time communication.
Yeah, so what WebRTC is, it's basically an API that allows users to communicate through browsers without any internal or external plugin. It's an exciting new addition to the web platform. Honestly, I think it's probably one of the most exciting things happens to the web after the introduction of Ajax.
Exactly, you're correct. And when you say real-time communication, it can either be a voice call, a video chat, or even peer-to-peer file sharing. So what WebRTC does is it lets you capture the microphone or the camera of the person that's visiting your web page, and it lets you stream that video or the audio to anywhere you want. So the possibilities that comes with this is quite a lot.
Yeah, so I think one of the most important factor about WebRTC is it's finally managed to fill the critical gap between web platform and its real-time communication.
Yeah, that's true, because prior to WebRTC, proprietary softwares like Skype could do something that the web just couldn't do or even dream of. But with WebRTC, the tables are turned. Now the web has the upper hand, because without any installations or plugins of any kind, the users can now do the communication just by loading a web page. And I think that's a huge win for web. So now, Randula, if you have to talk about the availability of this, what are the browsers that supports WebRTC currently?
Well, most of the major browsers are now capable of handling WebRTC. So let's say Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, and even the mobile versions of those browsers support WebRTC. So there's a huge support out there.
Alright, that's actually great news. But now I'm going to ask the question that's on everybody's mind. What about Internet Explorer?
Well, unfortunately, Internet Explorer lacks the native support for WebRTC. But I think recently announced Microsoft Edge will have support for WebRTC.
Oh, that's actually great news. Alright, now Sandrenu will be joining us to explain how the Senate Mobile's WebRTC API works. Okay, Sandrenu, can you tell us how Senate Mobile's WebRTC API differs from all the other APIs out there?
Okay, Prasindu, now normally we use WebRTC APIs to have communication between browser to browser. But with Senate Mobile WebRTC API, you can make a call from browser to a normal mobile phone. As you already know, you need the browsers provide the JavaScript APIs to have this WebRTC communication. But with Senate Mobile APIs, you don't have to learn any JavaScript APIs. We provide you a simple JavaScript snippet which you can embed in your web application, and it will render a call button. By clicking on that call button, it will generate the call from browser to the mobile phone. Mainly our API consists of 3 API calls. First one is the create component API call. With this API call, you can provision a mobile number to be used in a call button. Important thing to remember here is that the external reference ID parameter you provide here should be a unique for your application, and you have to save it in your application for a later reference by other API calls. Once you get the success response, you can use the next API call, which is request script API call, to get the JavaScript snippet, and you can use that snippet to embed in your web application. Here also you have to provide the external reference number you used in the previous call as the parameter. As the response, you will get the JavaScript snippet. Last one is revoke script API. This can be used to revoke the call button we previously created. Here also you have to provide the external reference ID we originally used. After you call the revoke script call, you won't be able to make calls from previously generated call button. Those are the 3 API calls we have. Now let's see how to use them in a real world application.
Okay, so now Randhanu will guide you through how to use WebRTC APIs. Alright, so Randhanu, for the demonstration, what we are trying to build is we are trying to create a website for advertisements, right?
Exactly.
Where sellers could come and advertise their products and say, okay, this is the price I'm going to sell my product, so that the buyers could call them.
Exactly. So sellers can add the product name, product prices, and the number as well. So typical websites has the number as a text on the website. So using Zenith Mobile APIs will generate the call icon through that number, and users can just call from that number directly without leaving the web page.
Alright, sounds great. So shall we get started then?
Sure. Okay, so you can find the source code of our WebRTC demo application on the Zenith Mobile GitHub account, and you can check the README to set up the environment. And this is a Java based project, a Spring MVC web application, and we are using JDK 7 and Maven as the build tool and MySQL as the database and Tomcat for the deployment. So before setting up the environment and running the project, let's clone it. Clone into WebRTC demo folder. So let's open it up on our IDE. So we are using Integer IDEA as our IDE. Can import it. Next, JDK 7. Next, finish. Okay. And you can check the project structure here. And here you can see the WebRTC dump file where we can use to source and set up the initial advertisement application. So I have already done it on my database, and then after that we can build the initial project and run it and check the initial setup of the advertisement application. Okay, done. Then let's deploy it on the Tomcat. All the executed command will be in the README, and after the deployment, let's check our website. So this is a sample website which we already explained in our use case, sample ad bus website. And going back to the project, since this is a Spring MVC application, you can find the controller here, the home controller, and then all the views on the JSP. So we have main 2 JSPs, create ad item and the list all ads, and then the resources, all the properties will go under this. So what we can do is, now we'll integrate the WebRTC API to this to integrate the call icon button. So first of all, we need to create the WebRTC API. So for that we can use the Zenith Mobile SDK for that, and this is the dependency we can use, and let's add it to the POM file. After that, let's configure this port project, and in the home controller, so let's create the WebRTC API object here, TZ API. And here what we'll do is, when you're creating the application, we'll create the component on the tap platform side and then request script for that component using the reference ID. So first of all, let's create the component using WebRTC API dot create component. So you can see we need a couple of things to pass it for this method. So it's a URL, app ID, app password, and the mobile number and the external ref ID. So app ID and app password we'll get when we provision the application on the tab platform, and then we can get the external ref ID for, as in the previous line, using UUID, random UUID. And so we'll add those to the property file, the app ID, and I have already created the app using this. Then a password, okay. Then what we need is the create component URL and the request script URL. So let's configure it here. Create component URL, which will provision our add item in the tab platform, and then request script URL. Here as well. So we are done with the configurations, and going back to our controller, here we can append the app ID like the previous one. App ID, then likewise can add the app password, and then two URLs, create component URL and the create component URL, and then the request script URL. Okay. So we have initialized those variables, and now through our property file, and now we can use it to call the method. So create component URL, and then what we need is the app ID, app password, and as the external reference ID we'll use add ID, unique add ID, and then the mobile number. So we'll get the mobile number from the form that's submitted from the user. So add item form, get mobile number, finish off the project. This one. So when we can check on the API, so the response for this will be a map. So this method will return a map, so we can use that map to get the component response. So we need to check whether this component successfully created or not. So to that, let's check the status of it. So if it's successfully created, we can use the reference ID, the unique ID, to request the script for that component. So we'll use the WebRTC API to request the script. WebRTC API request script and request a script URL, app ID, then the app password, then external reference ID. We'll use the add ID as that. So likewise, the create component, this will return a map. So test script response here. Likewise, we check the success scenario on the create component. We need to check the success of the request script as well to get the script. So let's check it. So if it's success, let's get the script. So request script response get response key dot script. So let's cast it to string, and then here what we can do is we'll save it to the database. So when you are listing all the ads, it will fetch from the database and request the call icon from this script. So we can reuse this code snippet. So here we can use the request script like this. So this will successfully save the ad we created on the database. So let's format the code a little bit. We can remove this as well. So let's build it and check. Okay, let's deploy this on Tomcat. Okay, so let's create an ad. Then it will create the component on the other side, and we can request the script and it will save to the database. So let's create a Samsung TV advertisement. Need to TV on that thing, $720, just a figure. Upload file. So the ad component we have created successfully. So now you can see the call icon button generated from our created advertisement. So if you check your database, you can view the script which is already created from our API calls. The special case of the script is it does not include the phone number which you entered when you're creating. So through the Send Mobile APIs, the phone number is hidden and the privacy is protected on that. So that's a special scenario which is like differentiate from other WebRTC APIs. And then let's check the real-time communication which we simply integrated to our application. So it's a matter of a click and you need to allow this. So you can see the dialing state, the rigging state, and then the connected state and the disconnected state. So those are the main states which captured. So for the time being, we have already discussed two API calls, create component and request script. So one more API to discuss, which is revoke component. So let's say scenario you need to discontinue this ad, or like disable this call icon button. So what you can do is you can simply call that revoke component, so this automatically this icon will be disabled. So for that we'll use Postman to send the request, our revoke request. So Postman is a popular tool, a Chrome extension. You can find it from the Chrome web store. So from that we can send out the HTTP requests. So here we'll use that to send the revoke request. So we can use this add ID is the external reference ID. And then the app ID and password which we already request, so send it. So you can say it's success, and let's refresh. Okay, so you can say it's not available, so you can simply disable it. So those are the main 3 API calls which enables by Zenit Mobile Tap API for WebRTC. So you can see how easily you can incorporate the script and embed it to your web application and easily enable your web app to communicate real time and run through the whole process. So that's it for the demo session. So you can find our source code and details on the Git account, on Zenit Mobile account, and I'll also commit this to a different branch, the CTAP integration branch, for further references.
Okay, Randula, so what are the other use cases that we can use WebRTC for?
So let's say online consultancy services, so tax advisory services, insurance advisory services. So users can directly call from their browser by clicking that call icon and sort out the issues. And let's say online medical forums.
Yeah.
So patients can directly call from the browser and then sort out the issues with the doctor. And similarly online counseling services, like that.
Okay, maybe another use case that comes to mind is we can use this call button on our blogs or personal websites. So people who want to communicate with us can just directly call us. And also even on online trading websites, we can use this, where traders can communicate with each other using this call button.
So similarly important use case will be a customer care services.
Yeah, that's true.
So users can sort out the issues, you can clicking the call icon through their browser. So customer care services is one important thing that mostly widely used on this WebRTC.
Alright, great. Okay guys, so that wraps up our session for WebRTC. Thanks for joining us and hope it was insightful for you guys. Just a quick reminder on the event that is coming up. The TEDHack, or the International Telco Application Developer Hackathon, is happening on the 13th and the 14th of June. So the event is held across the globe in 11 countries and you have an exciting chance to take part in it. So if you haven't registered your team yet, you can visit our website devspace.zenitmobile.com, or you can find out more information by visiting the official website tedhack.com/2015. Also stay tuned for more information by joining our Facebook event for TEDHack Sri Lanka 2015. Alright, so we hope to see you guys on our next webinar, which will be on the TAP IDE, happening on 18th of May. Thanks.